Okay, so how's everybody doing? So this will be just a little classroom session of Paint Theory 101, the Boomer way or my way. This is maybe just a little episode that might seem boring for some, but it's absolutely essential, and a couple of reasons why is, well, it has everything to do with saving paint, like stretching paint, but it also is fundamental in the layers, the glazes, the filters, the washes, whatever you want to call them, to get that realistic scenery look. And many people have asked, and sorry for sort of dodging the issue. I just take mixing paint and thinning paint for granted. I've done it for so long, like my whole adult life and in my career. And geez, I don't measure anything anymore. I haven't for years. When I was in the industry, like we didn't have time for eyedroppers and flasks, and I mean we used scales and stuff for rubbers and certain mediums that had to be accurate in terms of ratio. But when it came to paint, it's like you don't have time for that. You just you get into a zone, you're painting 11 12 hours a day sometimes, and you just mix on the fly. And I'm sort of like that now. It's kind of undisciplined maybe, but if it works, who cares, right? So I don't get caught up in that, but I understand why people want to know, because when you don't know, then you need a basis to start somewhere. And I want to talk about these Tamiya paints for a second, but then also just briefly mention or show you like some of the products that I use generally for scenery, uh, texture work and color and so on. And some of you might be familiar with this. Okay, so let me just mention about isopropyl alcohol. So isopropyl alcohol at 99% is the strength of this particular bottle, right? So just in theory, like if you buy 50%, it's just 50% isopropyl with 50% distilled water. Like that's all it is, right? So if you're going to buy isopropyl alcohol, you might as well buy 99% because you get more concentrate per volume than you would if you bought 50% or 75%. That's all that means. It's just a concentration, okay? 99%. So if I poured this into another empty bottle halfway and then top both of them up to the top with distilled water, they would both be, 49% or whatever, okay? So, and it's completely safe to use 99% isopropyl alcohol with Tamiya, for example. We'll just stay on that. But it will separate when it sits for a while. Like the pigment will fall to the bottom and then you get this clear layer, but you just shake it up and it mixes again. And the beauty of that is a lot of people don't realize is that when the isopropyl alcohol, it does have a higher evaporation rate, the higher percentage that it is. And the higher it is, the more pure the color looks, I find, the pigment. Like when the isopropyl without water, like it completely evaporates and it doesn't disperse the pigment like water does. Like water will spread, like pretend that the pigment are these little particles floating around on an emulsion like water or isopropyl or whatever acrylic emulsion is used for paint. The thing about the isopropyl is it doesn't sit around for a long time and then allow the pigments to lay spread out, right? Like here, I'll show you here just on a quick little sketch. So if these are the pigments, color pigments floating around on the water, when the water like evaporates, like this circles the water, then that's the ratio of the spread of pigment of color. But if you use isopropyl alcohol, you end up more with this kind of thing. Like you get, like the molecules of the paint don't spread out as much because the evaporation rate is higher. So you get a richer color tone, right? So that's why I use the isopropyl for thinning, because I can thin this paint down. Like let me show you here. Like here's an example of a bottle I just keep topping up with isopropyl. I haven't added any pigment for quite a while. But see how it looks really watery, right? Like you can apply this with just a regular brush like this or spray with an airbrush, and you would be surprised at the opaqueness of it or the coverage, right? the more you thin it, the more transparent it gets. But sorry, acrylic paints are not inherently transparent, but you can cheat that by spreading out all these molecules here, right? Like the further apart they are, the more transparent the paint becomes. Oil paints is another lesson altogether. They're naturally transparent. But anyway, what I do is when I usually buy a bottle of earth, for example, okay, when you open it up, like, you're quite surprised. You go, wow, they only filled it halfway. What a ripoff. I mean, okay, that's a good argument. I think it is too, in a way, but what it is actually is all the pigment. Like, they just fill it full of pigment with a little bit of thinner. And the thinner that they use is a derivative of isopropyl alcohol. I don't know what the chemical properties are exactly, but I know from experience, right? Because I've been shooting this paint solidly for 25 years and been using this to thin it with. So, and I've heard people say, oh, it doesn't have the same. Yes, it does. It looks just as good as any other thinner or expensive derivative that you want to buy. This is the cheap way to go. And if you use isopropyl, like, you never have to worry about gumming up your airbrush. Like, it cleans so easy. It's just such a great cleaner, like on the fly. And I don't spend 15 minutes cleaning my airbrush. I clean it in 2 minutes. Okay, with that, because I use isopropyl, and to me only, in this particular airbrush. Okay, all right. So I generally take this bottle here like this, okay, and then I'll take 2 cleaned bottles, which is another thing that I would like to mention. Keep all your jars and get a larger jar and fill it full of isopropyl, 99% if you can, or 70, and just take them apart. Like, put the caps, like these pop out with a flathead screwdriver, just pop them out, 2 parts, throw the lids and the liner in with the jar and let them soak for a day or two, and watch, like, they'll clean up with soap and water, like crystal clear like this. And they're beautiful little glass, really heavy duty too, like thick glass jars. You know, the caps aren't bad. I've only broken 1 or 2 over the years, but they last too. So this is pretty much the ratio that I begin with. Is I take a brand new bottle, okay, in this case, once again, XF52, and then I take 2 of these clean bottles, okay, like that. And then what I do is I top up this bottle here, but I usually stir it first, right, the pigment, and then give it a really good shake, right, okay. And then what I do is I basically, pardon my sloppiness here, but I basically pour half in like that. Okay, half into, from here, from the new bottle. And then I shake that up. And then I just rough in another half, like that. Okay. This is for just doing the soils and the overspray. Okay. That I'll also demonstrate. And then I take this here again, and I go about half there. Notice how I'm not really measuring and not overly concerned about the ratio, because this pigment is so good, right? It's such good quality. So here's the third breakdown, and then I give it one more top up like that, okay? So I just top up the new bottle, shake it up, that's where most of the pigment is, cut it in half, put half in here, top up the isopropyl, shake it up, pour this into this again, break down half, top it up, okay? And this is what I get. I get this super thin, watery, almost transparent earth. And that's what you want. And you might even want to go thinner than that. So when you spray onto your terrain, I mean, look at that. Like that's part of that filter, right? That's what you want over top of everything, like for track right away. All right. Okay, so just in closing, then I just want to mention these other acrylic paints that I use in products quick, just so people know, right? If you ever wonder, apart from what Tamiya paint, which I use almost exclusively for scenery paint, and I also use them to paint rolling stock and locomotives too. I don't use any real oil-based paints except for oil from the tube for washes, for glazes and stuff. I'll use them at the very end or for some fine detailing or washes. But I've moved to, all water-based products over the years, and I'm glad I did, especially when you get older. Like, you start to feel it. If you've been shooting paint as long as I have, like, 30, 40 years, like, you start to feel it, right? And like in your body. But anyway, I use golden because they're simply one of the finest pigments in the world out there. They're professional. It doesn't mean you have to be a professional to use them. It just the pigments are superior. Why does that matter? Well, because you can thin them more and they go further. So people say, oh, they're expensive. Yeah, but they'll go 10 times further than any crap paint will. Okay, I've proven that. I don't even need to argue that. But anyway, these tubes, these colors, it's all compatible. You can mix, you can squeeze this into here. You can pour this, you can add this to this, or all the golden products, all of them, virtually all of them anyway, are compatible. You can mix them, and with water. You just add water to them, thin them. So that's why I like them. There's just a one shop stop quality paint kit that I just really love, okay? Now, I use these with a brush, obviously, okay, for washes and, well, mostly washes, and maybe a base coat or something, or for tinting. If I want to tint other colors, then I'll use these. Now, you can shoot these high flow acrylics. They come like this, straight into the airbrush. Like, you don't need to thin this. Not the high flow acrylics, you don't. This is excellent paint. I don't use it that much because it's a bit pricey. You can get away with white craft paint if you want, or whatever if you're just basing out. But I use it because there's a place for it, And you can see the symbolism on here: airbrush, traditional brush, sort of an old style ink pen, and then a paint pen, right? This paint here is also not cheap, but it's very good. The pigment is superior. This goes a long ways. You can thin this down with water, or you can use open thinner for your airbrush if you want to shoot it through your airbrush. Okay? And then for texturing, I have them all their pastes and gels and acrylic mediums, pretty much. Extra heavy molding paste, fiber paste for building up smaller detailed textures. You'll see where I've used some early on along the beach. I didn't use fiber paste, but I used a more coarse molding paste. And what I do is I have a test sheet here, right, where I show, I don't know if you can see that well, but I have them labeled there. See? Coarse molding paste. Just shows you my texture, my go-to coarse pumice gel. Very gritty when it dries. Fine pumice gel, so on and so on. The soft gel gloss, semi-gloss, and there's others too. But I just put them on this test strip, black, so that I can reference them. Because, I hold it in memory, but I forget sometimes. So that helps when I'm looking at a scenery situation and I go, okay, or if I'm going to do water, I'm going to say, oh, wow, look at that. There's glass bead. I'm going to use glass bead for the ripples, like around the pilings and stuff, the current going around. But I can mix it with this and add a bit of, okay? And so they come in other different viscosities as well. Excellent stuff for doing final finish for water techniques that I'll be demonstrating later on down the road for the water, where the barge slip goes, which is right here, actually. Okay, so that's the products I use generally, if anybody was wondering. Okay, so cheers, and hope you have a great day.